Hey guys, it's Tommy and welcome back to StudioScents. Today I'm going to do a first impressions of a Abercrombie & Fitch First Instinct Blue. So it is a blue fragrance in the kind of the blue genre of fragrances. But a lot of people were curious about First Instinct, and if you watched my how I would spend $250 as a beginner in fragrances, you saw that First Instinct was one of my picks. I believe number 4 or 5, possibly. I can't remember. There were 10 fragrances. First Instinct did rank among them. I really do like First Instinct. I think it's a great economical buy. And it's a great fragrance for what you spend, and it's a good representation of the kind of quality you can expect from Abercrombie & Fitch. However, I do have some curiosities about First Instinct Blue. Gotten a little bit of negative comments in the community. Most people seem to feel meh about it. Today I'm going to break open the cellophane in the box, try it out for myself on a strip and on my skin, and see if it's got any kind of quality about it or anything that sets it apart, makes it a little bit distinctive, or if it's just another blue fragrance that is fresh but doesn't last very long at all. So we're going to test those things out today with my first impressions. Girlfriends like that are completely overrated. Wives are where it's at. I don't know why they use sex to sell in commercials like this. Housework is the new sexy. See, this stuff just isn't appealing to me. I'd rather give my wife a foot rub than to have a six-pack of abs. I'd rather be in submission to a wife than for a girl like that to be in submission to me. First Instinct Blue is touted as being a masculine aromatic fougere. It's supposed to be fresh, and it's supposed to embody a man who lives by adventure and on his first instinct, first impulse. Maybe that should be a new flanker. Abercrombie & Fitch, First Impulse. One of the reasons that I really liked Abercrombie & Fitch First Instinct was that very distinctive melon note that is in it that you don't find in a lot of fragrances, especially in original fragrances. Now, let's bust into this one and see that some of the notes that are talked about here I'll go into a little bit more after we spray it down on a tester strip. So I'm just gonna tear off let's tear into the box here. Okay, so we have a standard box, Abercrombie Fitch in kind of a blue and a silver. First Instinct Blue here on the very bottom. You got your ingredients listing along with a batch code and your SKU and barcode there. On the front, of course, you have eau de toilette, 100 ml, and then nothing on the top or the sides. And that's it for the box. A nice presentation. I really like this bottle because it kind of reminds me of a man's wallet, something that's very masculine. It is a nice, hefty, weighty bottle. There on the side, you've got a metal plaque or stamp on the side of the bottle that actually has the brand Abercrombie & Fitch First Instinct Blue on the side of it, so that's cool. The cap itself is plastic, pops right off. It has a very firm grip and does snap into place. So that's always a prerequisite for me. You see me do that in reviews. Because I feel if you're in a hurry, or sometimes if you're gonna drop the bottle and you grab it by the cap, you wanna make sure that it's gonna hold it up. And it's really neat because there's a kind of an undulating pattern on the glass itself, which is sort of reminds you of, I always think of years ago on the Fierce bottle, that photo of the guy like this with his abs. This almost feels like abs embedded into glass. On the very bottom, you've got the Abercrombie & Fitch sticker with some product information there. All right, let's get into the juice and see what that's like. I'm gonna spray the atomizer this way because all my electronic equipment is that way. And oddly enough, alcohol, essential oils, and electronics are not good bedfellows. I have discovered that before. All right, so here we go. Okay, I don't really care for the atomizer. It doesn't shoot spray. It doesn't shoot the juice very far. It does it in a kind of a wider spray pattern, wider array. So you wish you could kind of hone that. So if you're gonna spray it, you wanna make sure to get really up close to your skin. Let's try that again, get it a little bit closer. It's okay. It's not that great, but it's an okay atomizer. I do like, it's got a very bright, vibrant open, and it's very green. It does have that, that almost like a mint-like cooling sensation in the, and I can definitely appreciate the apple note. So I really like apple. Apple notes can really enhance, and I've also smelled apple notes that have detracted from an actual fragrance because there are two warring notes, one trying to take dominance over the other, and they end up butting heads and creating kind of a discord. It's not like that in First Instinct Blue. I really like the cool apple note that you get right out of the beginning. However, it is already starting to dissipate after, you know, less than a minute that I've been talking about it. That doesn't necessarily bode well for the longevity. It's really disappointing to me because I know opens are like, you know, first impressions, just like this video is a first impression, but opens, at least representative of the fragrance, is a first impression. First impression should last a little bit longer. It should be like a handshake into the mid, introducing you to other notes as they begin unfolding in the fragrance, and then just coming enveloped in the warm blanket that is typically the dry down. Just going over some of the notes. Top notes are, of course, bergamot, cardamom, and frozen apple, chilled apple, cold apple, you know, however you want to put it. Going into the mid, we've got more of a kind of a spicy floral. So we've got pepper, we've got geranium and lavender. Going down into the dry down, we have tonka bean, amber, and sandalwood for the woods. With First Instinct is that apple note is still a little bit there, not quite as fresh and cool as at the beginning. It's already starting to dissipate just a little bit. Definitely got the sense of bergamot, cardamom. Bergamot and cardamom are almost like the two amigos waiting on the third amigo. Third amigo can be anything else that you want to add to it because it's very friendly. I don't want to call it the tofu of the fragrance world, but bergamot is almost necessary for every open. It's super popular in a lot of the fragrances that came out in the mid to early 90s on into the 2000s. This First Instinct Blue came out in 2018, so it's a relatively new fragrance. Already it's garnered a lot of hate. Not necessarily hate, but just like indifference almost, because there are a lot of fragrances that do what this fragrance does really well, a little bit better. It does remind me, I do get a lot actually, I do get a lot of sense of Versace Dylan Blue itself. So categorizing this as a blue fragrance, it does a really good job of standing on its own in the blue category, but is it really that different? Unfortunately, the apple is almost all gone and we just got into the mid a little bit. So the cardamom becomes a little bit more apparent as the bergamot and the apple dry up a little bit. It gets a little bit warmer, starts moving a little bit away from the chili or the cool or the blue side. A little bit less of a blue fragrance. Nothing super distinct or different about the notes that are in Instinct. First Instinct, unfortunately, stays in the First Instinct. It stays as part of a first impression, but not into a lasting impression. And I think that's going to probably be representative of this fragrance as a whole. So I'm going to try it now as a skin scent and see what it's like on my skin. So let me pull mine. So I'm going to spray. So I sprayed two sprays rather on my arm. I'm going to give that a moment to dry. I really like that fresh apple, that fresh chilled apple smell in the open. That bergamot, you got a nice citrusy, springy, green, fresh open, as a lot of blue fragrances have. So they did that right, but can it keep that stance? That is the question. I think most guys that purchase masculine fragrances want kind of a combination or a mix of something super fragrant that smells really good, but also lasts and gives some kind of performance, not necessarily performance powerhouse. It's always a surprise. It's always a nice and pleasant surprise when you purchase something relatively inexpensively and it turns out to be a performance powerhouse, but it's not ever expected, honestly. And I didn't have any expectations going into this that this was going to be a performance powerhouse, but it also was hoping that it would ride that middle line, that middle distance between economical yet a really good deal. It's a shame because I really want to like this. But I do like it. I just don't feel it has a punch that I'm looking for. I I really liked First Instinct. I'm gonna stand by that. I stand by First Instinct still. But the blue fragrance is it's not doing a lot for me. It kind of dissipates. It's representative and reminds me too much of like Versace Dylan Blue, only Dylan Blue does it a lot better, I think. This seems like a clone of Dylan Blue, honestly, and not a very good one. So I'm gonna encapsulate and summarize my feelings of this. I think it's a good first impression. I love the opening notes in this, especially the chilled apple, what they do with the bergamot, cardamom, and the apple. Going into the dry down with the pepper, the geranium, the lavender, you don't really get a lot of floral, although there should be a little bit of floral notes in there. I don't get a lot of that. I do get some of the amber, some of the tonka bean, and the sandalwood that work together into the dry down, but nothing very distinctive, nothing at all that sets this apart. So it is kind of I see why the community, has sort of reacted in a kind of a indifference or a little bit of meh. So this is kind of a meh type of fragrance. I am glad that I have it. I think I think the presentation is cool. I think that it has its place. Like if you have a signature scent, those days you want to just kick back in jeans and a t-shirt and read a book or watch a movie or go see a movie with a friend or something, you can throw this on. If you're going to be in an activity that's not going to take very long, because you're probably only going to get about 2 to 3 hours of longevity out of this, and then it is seriously just a skin scent. So is it worth the money? Well, you tell me. If you can get it for relatively inexpensively, this was purchased for under $20. So at that, I think it's a pretty good deal. I think it is. I think it's still worth having. But if you do have Versace Dylan Blue or some others out there like that make better use, or for the original, the First Instinct and not the flanker, just stick with that. It does have a nice fragrant smell to it, but it's something that you have to sit there and just jam into your nose after a couple of hours for it to even register that it's there. And that's not necessarily a high quality in my book or something worth having on the shelf. So again, if you have another one that's similar to this, another blue fragrance that gives you those notes, stick to that. All right, guys, that's it for my first impressions of Abercrombie & Fitch First Instinct Blue. For those of you that are stopping by for the first time, hit that bell icon. That way you know when we drop videos on the daily. For those of you that have subscribed and have been with me, thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot to me. I'm Tommy with StudioScents, and I'll see you next time. Sex. Who even really needs to